showing that you care. It's showing that you care.
Wishing and hoping for a happy new year. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210 KEVT, Sahuarita, Tucson. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. The sanctified churches in the South lent themselves to an Afrocentric form of appreciation for their deity. The first modified drum kits were in the sanctified churches with sticks and tambourines and maybe even electric guitar. The gospel hymns were infectious and spoke of celebration, hope, and most importantly, spirit. The preachers were often pugnacious and speaking to a congregation that wanted the truth, not the warmed-over Anglo-Protestant messages coming from the other side of town. These preachers found places like Eufaula, Alabama, untenable, and took their families to the Midwest, where car companies and industry roared with commerce jobs and a hotbed of cross-fertilized music. My guest today is a superstar soul singer. She has been striving for elevated consciousness and individualism since she broke on the scene over 5 decades ago. Born the daughter of a preacher man, my guest was immersed in Detroit's Metropolitan Church and Choir. She was also privy to the hottest nightclub scene in America, where jazz was being played in soul clubs and blues was being played in the jazz clubs or on the street. There were no jazz schools, and learning came in the form of street learning, finding like-minded singers and accompanists because it didn't matter what you wear, just as long as you were there. My guess has been the undisputed truth of Motown. Her southern gut-bucket approach was heavier and funkier than many of her contemporaries. Her songs had hooks rarely seen for the time that allowed audiences of all colors to hip sway in the night on TV shows, dances, and studio demos. She became an instant sensation, and the testament to her longevity is that her tunes are still recognizable today by a new generation of Americans, one that is less white, more multi-ethnic, and maybe less sure of their roots. My guest's roots were with Della Reese, whose name she incorporated into her trio known as the Vandellas. She learned how to project on the bandstand and entertain, as well as swing. When Motown went west, she stayed in Detroit and became a purveyor of social justice while continuing her performing career on labels like RCA, Arista, and Fantasy. Nowhere to run to, Martha Reeves, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you, Jake Feinberg. What a pleasure to hear all that good stuff about me.
Well, there's a lot more to it. It's nice. It's such an honor to connect with you. Martha, I wanted to ask you, cats like Kenny Burrell, Elvin Jones, Donald Byrd, Yusef Lateef, Barry Harris, the Tommy Flanagan, they all came out of Detroit. And when you were working those odd jobs during the day and singing in those jazz clubs at night, I wanted to know the cats that you played with. I wanted you to paint the picture of that scene for us.
Well, it wasn't really a lot of my performing in jazz clubs, but I was discovered in the Detroit 20 Grand. I had won an amateur contest, which was a thing before American Idol and X Factor. We were privy to different theaters to do amateur shows. And on one occasion, I won a contest that allowed me to sing in you could consider the 20 Grand a jazz nightclub, but they had all types of music there. Biggest names in the music business played the 20 Grand, which is now defunct, but it was a privilege and an honor to be able to have 3 nights there, $5 a night, during the happy hour, because I lived in a house where Dad wouldn't let you come in after 12. You had to be in before, no matter what age you were. If you lived in this house, you came in before 12. So William Stevenson of the A&R department, better known as Hitsville, USA, which became known better as Motown Records, invited me to Hitsville, USA to have an audition. I didn't know, with him giving me that card, what it implied. I showed up the next day, which was a Monday, and the first of the month, and presented my card and was allowed to speak with him in his office. That was how I made the connection. I kind of felt like he was sent to me by God, and that was my beginning of my professional career. And the rest is our music history.
I think, didn't you show up early and you were accosted by the people there? So I read.
There were people, about 50 of them, standing on the stairway because that's how it was in the early days. People always lined up to see if they could get a chance to be as famous as Mary Wells, Marv Johnson, the Miracles, and the Spinners, and who else was there? The Temptations had not made their arrival at that time, and the Supremes were there, but they didn't have hit records. They were just putting out records that Smokey Robinson had written, but they were not hits. The Marvelettes had hit with Mr. Postman, and they were doing a song called Beechwood 45789, which got us all in trouble because it was actually some lady's a phone number in Florida. but we were an up-and-coming company, and as I walked in the door, I passed about 50 people, but I showed them, look, I have a card. And so I was about business. So when I got there, he asked me what was I doing there, and I asked him, didn't he give me a card and asked me to come to that company? He said, yeah, but we have auditions every third Thursday. The phone ringing off the hook, and he was busy doing something. So he asked me if I would answer the phone in that A&R department until he got back. So I accepted the challenge and took over, and when he came back, I was indispensable because it took him 4 hours to get back. He was somewhere writing a song for this drummer named Marvin Gaye. He had been brought to the company by a man named Harvey Fuqua, who was married to one of Berry Gordy's sisters, Gwendolyn. And, it was a family company, and it seemed like everybody was related to everybody. When I answered that phone, I realized there were 17 guys working out of that office. And I took messages and kept all of the women separate from the wives and the singers and whatever. I did a good secretary job. And when he came back, I was indispensable because I handed him a stack of messages that I kept. I had torn up the notebook paper and made a stack of messages for him. And all of those different producers, all of them were singers, and all of them were writing for the different artists at Motown. It was a growing company. It was like a beehive. There was always some activity. The doors to Berry Gordy's house, which it was, with a hand-painted sign on it, never shut the doors. They were always open. Whenever you wanted, you could go and do any kind of work, dubbing in, adding a track of music or changing the drums or whatever. There was always some activity in that company. So I had landed in a good spot, and I held my spot for the 4 hours, and when he came back, he asked me to stay the rest of the day and asked me if I would come in the next day, and the rest is history. I never got the audition, but I was singing from the word go. I was doing demonstration records, and I might be the most recorded artist that Motown ever had because one of my jobs was making demonstration records.
Can you, were you working with Benny Benjamin and James Jamerson and those cats?
Oh, yeah.
You want to
Those
talk?
were the cats. Benny Benjamin and James Jamerson came to the door in that 4-hour job that I had before William Stevenson returned, and they were adamant. They wanted to fight somebody because they wanted the $5 that they had made the day before they cut the session across the hall to that day. And I put them directly to the on the phone with the salesperson, Betty O'Shea. She was taken aback when I put them direct on the phone with her, and she got to hear some of the choice words they were giving me. And I didn't know what I was doing there. I just knew that they wanted money in the sales department. This way you go and get it. They had 4 lines on that phone. One was the sales department, one was the A&R department, one was Berry Gordy's office, and one was the A&R, one was Studio A. So I called the sales department and put them directly on the line, and when they finished cursing her out like they had been doing me, somebody who didn't know what they were doing, she agreed to always have the musicians' checks ready for them after they performed the session. And that made everybody happy. And that might be why my tracks were so good, and why some of my songs were so groovy and so jazzy, because they really appreciated me speaking up for them, like I've done most of my career. Spoke up for people, represented, and was the one who would actually be bold enough to ask a thing like, "Can the musicians get paid?" Right.
The advocacy. Can you talk about? A little bit. You were probably too young to really even remember anything related to the church in Alabama. But can you talk about an experience, a transcendent musical or spiritual experience at the Metropolitan Church? Because I have to believe the advocacy came from your folks.
Oh yeah. Well, I never sang in the church in Alabama. I was brought to Detroit at the age of 11 months. We went back every summer because grandparents had a farm. Until they died, we would have a double life. We'd live our life in the winter in school, and when school was out, we would always go south and live our summer days on the farm. And so the church in Detroit was a family church, very few members, with my dad having 12 children. We were the choir. Dad had four sisters and 3 brothers, but none of them were talented. Dad had all the talented kids, so we were the church choir, and I spent most of my teenage years in the church singing with my brothers and sisters as the choir, unable to sing any secular music until I was about 15 years old. But then after that, I fell in love with Dinah Washington, Della Reese, Ella Fitzgerald, Nancy Wilson, singers like that who influenced me and made me want to sing like them. Lena Horne was the one who captured my soul when I saw her performing at a place called Paradise Valley. It was a theater, and I saw her on a show with Count Basie, Bill Doggett, Eddie Pegleg Bates.
Wow.
Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Pegleg Bates, Louis Armstrong, Caledonia, what makes your big head so hot? She was a rockin'. And Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, all of them on the same show. It was a wonderful show, and I was about 3 years old, if I can remember clearly. And it was when I decided I want to be in show business. I wanted to do what Lena Horne did to me when she was standing in front of that screen from the movie with people running by with umbrellas. And here's this beautiful woman singing the blues. And I said in my heart, she's too pretty to have that kind of blues. And I wanted to be a singer and affect people with my song, just like she did, having been debuted at the age of 3 in my grandfather's church with my 2 older brothers. So I knew Mama approved of my singing, and I knew I had something, and Mom encouraged me. She taught me how to retain lyrics, and I think she sang through me vicariously. I think my mom wanted to be a singer, but with 12 children, well, but she did sing to us sometimes when she got tired of beating us in the head, trying to get us to go to sleep with 2 and 3 in the beds.
I don't even know how that's. I mean, I have 2 kids. You know, that's the norm for today. But the families were. I mean, you know, Martha. Could you talk a little bit about? I mean, obviously the Sanctified Church in Alabama. Can you talk about?
But I was never in a sanctified church.
You never even
ventured into. It was an African Methodist Episcopal Church, and it was in Detroit.
I know, but
never in Alabama. Never.
When you went,
I was brought to Detroit when I was 11 months old.
But when you went back in the summers, you never went. You never.
We didn't go to. No. There was no church going in the South. We had restrictions in the South.
Can you?
And I'm talking 1945, 1950. There were not very many churches available to us, especially in Alabama. My grandfather's ministry was in Detroit.
Your grandfather's ministry was in Detroit.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I'm always fascinated. I've talked to these guys like, you know, Clyde Stubblefield and Jabo Starks, James Brown's drummers. You know, they're talking about these like modified drum sets, you know, where it was just like a tambourine, maybe a couple of sticks. And I just, you know, to me, it's like, you know, you need to have rhythm as an accompanist if you want to gig. I just kind of want to, you know, but when Martha Reeves is counting off a tempo, I mean, where do you think you developed your rhythm from? How did you get your rhythm?
We used to have a game called 10X. And sometimes we would turn the lights off and we'd use pots and pans and boxes and sticks and whatever to make rhythms. And we'd shout out when to stop and we'd shout out when to start. So as a family, we're the generation before television. As a family, we learned rhythms. It might have been because we're African Americans. But my tambourine playing that I do on every show was inspired by Jack Ashford of the Funk Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
He actually taught me how, because in our rhythms, the shuffles that we do are old hat. It's what the jazz musicians cut their baby teeth and lose their wisdom tooth trying to play. And most drummers will race your tempos because they don't know a shuffle. They don't know all the beats of a shuffle. So he taught me to play the tambourine so that I could hold down some of the fantastic rhythms that they put in songs like Nowhere to Run and even ballads like My Baby Loves Me. You can't race those tempos. Some modern-day drummers will get to a point in the song, and they'll speed through the rest of it. Well, I had to learn how to hold them down because there's a rhythm and a pocket for every song, and you have to stay in that tempo. Narada Walden is very good at keeping tempos. He's like a master of rhythms.
Yeah.
And it's always a pleasure to hear him perform and to perform with him. That's why when he called me about this annual Christmas celebration where he'll be helping people, this fundraiser, I was anxious to just come and play with him. I want to see good done as far as helping the people through his fundraising, but I also want to hear the good music that we're going to present together with his band and in San Francisco. My first time working with him was in New York. He's a New York cat.
When nothing can ease your mind and you've got no place to hide, and the wind whispers fears you've never heard, tearing at your pride, and all your dreams are made of sand. You better wipe the dust from your eyes. Don't you know you gotta keep on moving on?
Keep on moving on.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.
You gotta keep on moving on.
Keep on moving on.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.
Don't you know you gotta keep on moving on?
Keep on moving on.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.
You gotta keep on moving on.
Keep on moving on.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.
When nothing can ease your mind and you've got
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you in part by the Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, and the Tucson Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona. We thank them for their support. All right, Martha, what do you got for us?
J.J. Johnson.
That's
MCA
right.
Records?
Yeah.
Yes. That's from a movie. That's from a movie called Willie Dynamite.
Oh, man, I'm still looking for...
Keeping on.
Keep on moving on. Martha Reeves, this is after Motown bounced out to the West Coast. You decided to stay. And then these blaxploitation films were... I assume... I mean, like those cats like David T. Walker... Those tunes are just so funky and in the pocket. But I'm curious as to your experience. You know, that was really one of your first. I know you did a self-titled album in '74, but that was one of your first collaborations after Motown. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I give a lot of credit to Richard Perry, who's the producer of that particular project for the film score of Willie Dynamite, and he also did my first solo album, where I got the chance to work with. So many wonderful musicians, and the collaboration took a year. And MCA was a little upset about the budget, how much it cost. But he was in the meantime, as he was producing me, trying to reunite the Beatles. He was working with Smilson. He was doing the thing with Carly Simon.
Wow.
And he had quite a few people on his list. And I got to meet them, and it was wonderful. Singing back up with Mary Clayton on the drummer for the Ringo, the drummer for the Beatles.
Sure.
He was working with Ringo, trying to get John and George and Paul together. So it was an experience working with Richard Perry. What a producer! What a dynamite guy! And that pulled me out of disaster, because Motown moved and I had to move to L.A. for a while, and MCA was my lifesaver, my first solo album. We had such collaborations, such wonderful. James Gadsden was on there playing drums.
Oh,
he's fantastic.
Well, and I interviewed him.
Fantastic.
I interviewed that cat. I was with Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. It was a ridiculous dude. Did you? I'm curious. Did you know the cat G.C. Cameron?
Sure.
Because he had a similar situation that you did, where he was rocking with the Spinners, but then he went to Los Angeles, and split with Motown, and then went on a solo career. Did you guys? I mean, can you tell me a little bit about? I didn't realize that you actually did relocate to the West Coast. I thought you stayed in Detroit, but you went out to LA.
Oh no, I came back home.
You did?
Yeah, I stayed in Los Angeles 14 years, and I came back home after that. Both parents were in the hospital, so I came back because of emergency, a family emergency. But while there, I recorded on Fantasy as well as MCA Records to continue my career. It was just a one-album situation with Richard Perry on MCA. And moving on to the next company, it was Hank Cosby from Motown's Funk Brothers who invited me to record in Berkeley for Fantasy Records. And then from there, I went to Arista Records with the invitation of Clive Davis from Los Angeles. I moved back to Detroit, and the next thing you know, I'm in New York recording. So it's been a continuation of recording. I have never stopped. And I made some really nice songs, masterpieces. And the older I get in this business, the more people hear them and call me out. So we planted some good seeds with music. You've
been such a trendsetter, but can you talk about when you talk to younger cats, especially people that have basically grown up with music as a form of pacification instead of being moved, and also the relentless digitization of music? I just find it's harder for them to hear stuff. Their ears are not as open, and I'd like your opinion on that.
First of all, you can't replace real musicians with toys and gimmicks and knobs and sounds and pings and pangs. There's a inspiration from a musician when I perform. Like I said, every time we perform these songs, the musicians have their own interpretation. So we get different souls, different spirits, and everybody has their own interpretation. And you welcome that. It never gets mundane or repetitious because it's a different set of cats playing it. I insist on working with live musicians. I don't like working with tracks because
right.
The tracks can't make you feel anything.
That's right.
And the instruments that are duplicated by machines don't have the same spirit in them that the musicians put through. You know, it's necessary for me. There's something missing when it's not a real musician playing music behind me.
So when you hear people saying, "Yeah, I'm going to use Pro Tools and I'm going to do this and that," I mean, I guess the other thing is this, Martha. Not that you believe me. I know that you had to fight and scrap and claw. Jamerson, those cats were banging on the door. They wanted their $5. But
yeah.
Do you also feel? I mean, that a musician. I remember talking to somebody, someone in the 50s. Dizzy. Musicians were treated with the same regal qualities as lawyers and doctors, and today it seems to me that musicians, it's more of considered art, and therefore it's not a profession. Do you see that occurring where it's like, now you have cats that have to pay to play at a place,
yeah,
as opposed
yeah.
to, so I mean, how did that value, where did that switch come from? Was it as simple as Joe Sample told me when Reagan came in, the motto became, I got mine, why don't you have yours? Is that kind of is that where it started? Can you pinpoint how we got from royal treatment of classy melodic improvisers to, no, you're going to have to pay us if you want to play here?
I can't relate to anything but Motown because where my roots began is where my heart is. And they paid those guys $5 a session, and they scoured the city and found the best jazz musicians. The musicians were superb and hard to emulate. When we get ready to play a song, we got to show a bass player how James played on an upright, how he had a concert bass where it wasn't loud but powerful.
Right.
We had to sing in the pockets of his bass line. Well, we can't sing in a bass line if we can't hear ourselves. And so I have to always keep telling the bassist to turn down. And if you listen to concert music, or if you go to any symphony orchestra's performance, you'll notice that the bass is the quietest instrument, but the loudest heard.